Hello everybody, my name is Ray. This is Ray's Nintendo Talk, and today we are going to be talking about Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is the latest remaster in a long line of ports, remakes, and remasters that Nintendo has brought over to the Switch. The game was recently discovered on the Nintendo Switch eShop to be a whopping $60, full retail price. Now, let me tell you something. When I saw this, I thought the Nintendo community was going to explode with angry reactions. I was so sure that this was going to be the case that I decided one of my first ever videos on this channel was going to be dedicated to talking about this. But in my research for this video, I was shocked to find that no one was even talking about the game, much less its price. Now, Luigi's Mansion may not seem like a massive Nintendo franchise among the likes of Mario or Zelda, but history would tell you otherwise. In fact, since the original Luigi's Mansion release on the GameCube, the series has not only outsold itself with every new installment, but has doubled in sales with every new release. The first Luigi's Mansion released as a launch title for the GameCube in 2001, and due to the console's overall lack of success in comparison to the competition at the time, this game did not sell very well. It only sold about 3.3 million units, which is great for a brand new franchise, but Nintendo had to have been at least slightly disappointed with the results for a franchise with such strong roots to Mario. That disappointment led to 11 years without a brand new installment, but in 2013, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, or 2 for those outside of America, released on the 3DS and ended up selling about 6.5 million copies, doubling the sales of the original. More people than ever were getting their hands on this young franchise and discussing it online. But it was criticized by avid fans of the first installment for the mission-based gameplay loop, breaking the immersion, constantly taking you in and out of the game's multiple mansions. The game also was criticized for holding the player's hand too much, with constant calls from Professor Egad. As soon as you completed a mission, he would teleport you back to the lab or call to tell you what to do before you even got a chance to think about the solution yourself. This interrupted the little time you actually got to just explore the haunted halls of this charming world. But all of these problems and more would be addressed 6 years later in 2019, when the franchise's third installment, Luigi's Mansion 3, released on the Nintendo Switch. And let me tell you, this game absolutely exploded in popularity. Nintendo Life reported at the time that the game had sold more than 5 million copies in just 5 months. As of today, the game sits at a staggering 13.9 million copies sold worldwide, and people genuinely resonated with this game. It played a significant role in the game's studio, Next Level Games, being officially bought out by Nintendo. Next Level Games took the criticism from Luigi's Mansion 2 and ran with it, as Luigi's Mansion 3 incorporated the best parts of the first 2 installments. They brought back a spiritual successor to the portrait ghosts from Luigi's Mansion 1, which to many were the original game's best features. They even took out the hated multiple mansions in favor of one large hotel with 17 unique floors. This allowed the game developers to use many different unique themes without having to break up the gameplay so harshly like from Luigi's Mansion 2. And the graphics, oh my gosh, 5 years later, and I still believe this is the Switch's best looking game by far. All of this led to Luigi's Mansion 3 and the series at large to become somewhat of a behemoth in the sales figures. However, there is one game I may have left out when recounting the series' successes, and that game is the remake of the original Luigi's Mansion for the 3DS that released in 2018. The Nintendo Switch had just released in 2017, with brand new first-party games releasing almost every single month of the year. So, in the March 2018 Nintendo Direct, when Nintendo revealed that Luigi's Mansion was getting a remake for the 3DS, fans were extremely confused. A year into Nintendo's new era, and such a cool remake wasn't even playable on everyone's brand new hybrid console? This confusion, along with a less than intuitive control scheme converting a GameCube game to a less powerful console with less buttons to work with, led the game to only selling about a measly 470,000 copies. Because of this weird timing and the awful control scheme, this game was an absolute flop. But there is another reason as to why I believe this game failed on the 3DS, and that reason is its price tag. The game released for $40, which is full retail price for 3DS games, and then Nintendo released a remake that most consumers believed to be inferior to the original game on hardware that was all but dead for the exact same price as some of the console's best games. Of course the game was going to fail. Now, here we are, 6 years later, and Nintendo is preparing to release Luigi's Mansion 2 HD on the Nintendo Switch for full retail price, $60.
Here we go again.
Now, you might be thinking, what's wrong with that? It's an overall upgrade of a great 3DS game on a better and more popular console. Why wouldn't they charge $60 for that? Here is the problem. When Luigi's Mansion 2 released in 2013, it came out at a full retail price of $40. Then, a few years later, Nintendo cut its price to $20 as a part of their Nintendo Selects program. Which, for those who don't know, in the 3DS and Wii era, Nintendo would select specific first-party games and re-release them with new box art for a cheaper price to help boost that game's sales. But now, over 10 years later after the game's initial release, Nintendo is making the mistake of selling Luigi's Mansion 2 HD at the Switch's full retail price, $60. Nintendo probably saw the sales of the third game and internally believed that this series is now untouchable in terms of a failure. This confidence is leading them to release 2 HD for such a high price. But let me be very clear, I don't expect this game to be another embarrassing flop like the Luigi's Mansion remake. In fact, I anticipate this game will go on to sell about 2 to 4 million units, and Nintendo will rake in a nice little profit and just go on with their lives. However, I believe Nintendo is missing out on a great opportunity by selling this game for so much money. Let me run a quick thought experiment by you to make my point. Do you ever wonder why a lot of interns never get paid? Or why photographers starting out their careers won't charge you anything for a photo session? Better yet, why do you think all of these big YouTubers get paid to advertise different products? It all comes back to one thing: exposure. By interning at a big company, you get the opportunity to gain real experience and most importantly get those sweet connections with people who have the ability to hire you on full time. Photographers that take free pictures are trying to grow their portfolio and get people to say great things about them in order to gain more business. And advertisers are willing to pay a lot of money to get guys like Jacksepticeye or CoryX Kenshin to advertise their products, because there are so many loyal fans that watch them that will see those products and be much more willing to buy it. And many of those products you can get at a discounted price if you do so specifically through that YouTuber. It all comes back to exposure. The more people that see your product, the more likely it will reach the person that wants to buy it. Then those happy buyers might buy more of your product or recommend it to everybody else that they know. Now, with all of that in mind, let's shift our thought back to Nintendo. Yes, Luigi's Mansion 3 sold a ton of copies, and the series has already gained a ton of exposure and trust from the fans. But how much more trust and exposure do you think that they would get if they just released Luigi's Mansion 2 HD for $40 instead of $60? How much more accessible have you just made your up-and-coming series to an audience that likely has never played anything other than the third game? By lowering the price of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which, might I remind you, is a 10-year-old 3DS game, you would get even more people into the series and even more people invested in these games. By the time Luigi's Mansion 4 comes around, your consumers will feel even more obligated to stick around and see what wacky stuff Luigi gets up to this time. And then, you can sell that brand new game for a full retail price, and your audience will be much more likely to shell out that money for a brand new experience no one has ever played before. Like I said, I anticipate this game will sell fairly well, but the price could very well alienate a good chunk of the people who would have loved to buy it. There may even be those who bought the game on the 3DS and were excited to replay it. But then they noticed how the price increased by $20 to $40 depending on when you bought it for a simple upgrade, and they just no longer decide that it's worth reliving that experience. and all of these potential negatives could be avoided with a simple $20 price drop. Or the game will sell like crazy because people love the series that much and are just willing to shell out the money for a cool new game. I suppose only time will tell. And hey, depending on what happens, maybe I'll do a follow-up video to this one. I love talking about sales numbers and what they mean anyways. But I want to know, what do you think? Am I crazy for thinking this game might only sell 2 to 4 million copies? Is my exposure method not worth the price cut because people will just buy it anyways? Please let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in more talk about Nintendo sales numbers, I just did a whole other video breaking down what the Switch effect does to those numbers for almost every niche franchise. Thank you so much for watching Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.